Well, I am Bruce Damer. I'm from Northern California, Silicon Valley area, and I've been working in avatars and virtual worlds for about 15 years. And the fascination that I have with shared avatar spaces, multi-user spaces, is not only how they affect human beings and their relationship with each other, but there's another property that these shared worlds could have, which is as a space for lifelike processes to start. There's a field called artificial life that predates virtual worlds or codates it somewhat. And artificial life is all about creating simulated physics and the properties, objects that have the properties of life, that have phenotypes and genotypes, and seeing if you can create things that look like evolution. And my PhD research will be on several aspects of this, that virtual worlds can contain objects that can self-assemble, and replicators that can occur, and mutations that can occur within these objects in these virtual worlds. But going beyond that, to connect a grid of these different virtual world environments that are artificial life inspired to create what might be observable as a kind of artificial evolution. And there's a more fundamental, so the project's really a couple of elements. It's a very philosophical work, but the project's called the Evo Grid, or the Evolution Grid. And there's an Evo Grid Broad, which is to connect existing artificial life simulations into one grid, where a simulated ant can go into a simulated forest and interact with the plants in the forest to see if you can generate emergent properties. The second part of it is Evo Grid Deep, which comes back to Fred Hoyle's thesis or mind experiment of 20, 30 years ago, which was if a tornado came into a junkyard of random parts, it would assemble a 747, a Boeing 747 aircraft, which goes back to origins of life questions, in that possibly in the early oceans of the Earth you had a fairly random assembly of chemical parts, and after a few tens or hundreds of millions of years you had objects that could not only replicate themselves, they could replicate themselves from a blueprint, and the containers themselves were constructed from the blueprint and maintained from the blueprint and copied over and over again. And this was a phenomenal property of the early Earth, or of the universe, to generate this kind of effect. And so the Evo Grid Deep project would be the philosophical framework, prototype, and architecture and direction to create a simulation in which, in a virtual world, this same thing could occur at some point in the future, where the objects, without human hands, with just starting parameters and a large number of objects, and the statistics and the properties of the world, create the conditions for self-replicating, but more sophisticated than just gene copying, objects that are containers, that contain replicators, that have genes, which are blueprints, to create more objects. And that this could occur without anybody designing or creating, just initial conditions, but no human hand made this happen. And if that Evo Grid Deep does occur, it will shed light on origins of life, showing that in principle the mathematical model shows this could happen. It'll go to questions of God, the universe, our origins, where we're going, etc., of which I'm very interested as well, and could create the basis in the 21st century for a technology that uses evolution to evolve solutions, designs new drugs, new robotics, that evolution is a very powerful tool if it could be harnessed in some way. So the Evo Grid Deep starts from what Richard Gordon calls the origin of artificial life challenge, and it would take it forward from there. So the work would be primarily the storytelling and the script around the Evo Grid idea, end up with a presentation that could be given with some prototypes or computer graphics to show in principle how this thing might work, or the understanding of it, and then the implications for humanity as a whole. What I may be able to do is some part of the practice if I'm able to find or recruit a team to build prototypes of the EvoGrid. In the next few years, that will be a practice portion. But the majority of the work is going to be the philosophical portion, the history, examples, exemplars, impacts on humanity, impacts on our understanding of our place in the universe, tie-ins to biology, etc., etc. So that is in summary the best way right now that I can summarize the passionate plumb line idea that I've come up with for this work.